So today we're going to review Unit 1. So the first thing is properties. So I'm going to give some examples of the properties. Commutative property says that you can add or multiply things in different orders and get the same result. So for example, 4 plus 2 is the same thing as 2 plus 4. Also 4 times 2 is the same thing as 2 times 4. So somehow make a note that it also works for multiplication. The second is associative. So associative says that you can add and multiply, and you can do it with different groupings. So for example, if I have 1, I can add in parentheses 2 plus 3, so I can do the 2 plus 3 first and then add the 1, or I could do the 1 plus 2 first and then add the 3 and I would get the same thing. This will work as well for multiplication. Distributive means I can take a number that's on the outside of a parentheses or a variable and then distribute it to both things on the inside, and that would give me 4x plus 12. Reflexive just means that anything equals itself, so like 5 equals 5. Symmetric is saying that you can flip things over the equal sign. So for example, if 4x plus 7 equals 5, then 5 equals 4x plus 7. Transitive says that if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. Inverse has two types. The additive is if I have a number and I add the opposite sign, that gets me 0. The multiplicative says that if I take a number and I multiply by its reciprocal, which is the number or fraction flipped over, I get 1. Identity also has additive and multiplicative. The additive is that if I have a number and I add 0, I get that number back. And multiplicative is if I have a number and I multiply by 1, I get that number back. So then we're going to move on to factoring. So the first is GCF. So for example, if I have 8x cubed plus 4x squared plus 2x, I can take the GCF out first. This is the first step of all of your factoring problems, is to always check for GCF. So the first thing is I check for a number that can go into all of the numbers. So 8, 4, and 2. 2 can go into all of them. Then I look for variables. So they all have x's, and the smallest amount of x's is 1, so 2x is my GCF. Then what I do is I divide each of these by 2x. So when I divide the first term by 2x, I get left with 4x squared. When I divide the second term by 2x, I get 2x. And then the last term, when I divide by 2x, I'm left with nothing, so I have to put a 1 there. And then that is my final answer unless I could do something else. So the something else is that we could do is we could do one of the formulas if there are 2 terms left over. So over here, I'll do a refresher on the formulas. The first thing is difference of cubes, so a squared minus b squared equals a minus b, a plus b. So that's d2s, difference of two squares. To find the a and b, you have to take the square root. If you already know that, then you don't need to write it. But if you think you may forget it, or you weren't really sure, then definitely write that. Then there's difference of cubes. That's a cubed minus b cubed. You have a minus b, then a squared plus ab plus b squared. And then the last one is sum of two cubes, a cubed plus b cubed. That gets you a plus b, a squared minus ab plus b squared. Unfortunately, you do need to memorize these because they are not given to you on the SOL. So if we're looking at our example problems, the first one is x squared minus 81y squared. So since it's an even power, a squared, that means you have to use the first formula, difference of two squares. So I would square root both of these to get my a and my b. So my a would be x, and my b would be 9y. So then I fill it into the formula, x minus 9y, x plus 9y. There we go. The next one is 27x cubed minus 8. Remember, you have to check for GCF. Neither of these had one, so that's why I'm just going straight to the formula. So now this time I cube root both of them because it has a cube power. So a, the cube root of 27x cubed, is just 3x, and the cube root of 8 is 2. So then I fill it in to the second formula because of the subtraction in the problem. So it would be a minus b, then a squared. When I square a, I have to square the number and the variable. So it would be 9x squared. Then plus, then I do a times b, so 3x times 2 is 6x, plus then b squared, 2 squared is 4. The last type of factoring you need to look for is trial and error or slide and divide. So slide and divide is what we did. So the example is 7x squared minus 19x minus 6. So what I do is I make myself an x, and then I always do the first times the last. So 7 times negative 6. So somehow make yourself a note if you think you're going to forget, if you're not going to know where those numbers come from, of where, draw arrows or whatever you have to do. So 7 times negative 6 is negative 42. And then I put the bottom, or the middle number, into the bottom, negative 19. So then you can either use your brain or the calculator to figure out what multiplies to negative 42 and adds to negative 19. So I am going to show you the calculator way in case you have forgotten. So if you have forgotten, then make sure that you pay attention and write down some notes. So you put the top number into y equals negative 42. Divide by x. Then I hit second graph. So again, be taking notes, please, if you have forgotten this. So then I add across the rows until I get to something that will add to the bottom number, negative 19. So if I go down to 2 and negative 21, that gets me negative 19. So that is my combo. So I'm not done yet because I do have that number in front. So if I have a number in front after I take the GCF, that means I have to divide the two numbers that I just got by that number. So for the first one, negative 21 divided by 7 is nice. It's x minus 3. The second one, 2 divided by 7, is not nice and it does not reduce. So I slide the 7 out front of the x and then I keep the 2 after the sign. That is my final answer. So now you're going to go back to Google Classroom and click on the Socrative quiz, and you'll have 6 questions that you will have to answer in order to make sure that you understand.